Good morning everyone and welcome to this PGA introductory webinar. My name is Michael Abbott and I am the Member Education Executive here at the PGA and I'm very happy today to introduce our speaker for this session, Mr. Stephen Brown. Stephen, are you there?
I am indeed. Good morning to you.
You okay?
Yes, I'm fine.
Excellent, excellent. Just to give everyone a little bit of background information about Stephen, he is the founder and supreme commander of the company Information, which he started in 1987 to provide the UK's food and beverage outlets with solutions to their F&B concerns. Stephen is incredibly well known and respected in the golf industry for his experience and expertise in F&B management, and he regularly works throughout the UK and Europe advising the golf industry on how better to control and manage their F&B operations by providing individual solutions designed to reduce losses and increase efficiency. Stephen is with us today to talk about his seminar, Food and Beverage, Understanding How to Improve Profitability, Productivity and Controls, which is part of our member education program here at the PGA, and hopefully he can give us all a better idea of what will be covered on the course. So Stephen, over to you.
Well, that's very kind of you, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I sound really good. Let's hope I can live up to that. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our seminar on food and beverage, a subject which I am extremely passionate about, having worked with the topic for some 40 years now. When I first came to the golfing industry to talk to them about food and beverage, I actually had to learn everything all over again. It sounds bizarre, but it's true. Food and beverage within the golfing industry was not perceived to be a particularly important topic. Far more important, obviously, was the information that was required for setting up tournaments and managing golf courses and the like. And food and beverage was very much a secondary type of operation, and I had to be educated on this. So when I first came into the industry, about 10 or 12 years ago, I read everything I possibly could read on the topic, and interestingly, I found an article that said, and I quote here, it said, "Food and beverage in your golfing operation does not need to make money, it simply needs to break even." Well, as a businessman and somebody who is self-employed and therefore obviously driven by making a profit or at least a contribution, I couldn't get my head around that. I really struggled with that concept that golf clubs were rich enough, or in fact didn't care enough, that food and beverage actually made any money. It could make a loss. And I guess when I first started going back 12 years, in a lot of cases in the golfing industry, you had waiting lists of people to join golf clubs, 3, 4, even 5 years. You could basically charge an introduction fee, and within reason, charge whatever you wanted to charge as an annual sub. But the world has changed. So the all your food and beverage operation needs to do is to break even concept has died over the years. It became much, much more important now for food and beverage, as it is, as I'm speaking to you today, to make a positive contribution to the profits that a golf club makes. And I had to struggle with golf club managers and secretaries to actually get the word profit into their daily speak where food and beverage was concerned. And I still have difficulties at times with some golf club secretaries and committees that they still don't like the word profit. They are a not-for-profit organisation in many cases. Interestingly enough, I don't have the same difficulty when I'm talking to proprietary owners. They absolutely understand the need to make profit. And I do say to clubs, look, if you're in a situation where you don't actually need to make a profit because you are cash rich, well then that's great. Absolutely fine. You certainly don't need to be speaking to me. You certainly don't need my services. But for me, even if it's not about making a profit, you still need to make a positive contribution. And that's what this course intends to do for you. It aims to show you how you can make a positive contribution and to better understand the topic and the subject. And I guess my concern for people would be just exactly what do we need to know? I mean, how complex is the subject? Well, of course, like any other topic in any other subject, if you don't know it particularly well, it can be daunting. But what we aim to do on this course is to give you the basics. That over a 2-day period, we're going to take you through the need-to-know subjects, the things that you absolutely need to know. And what I've done on the course content here, and I've just given you some illustration here, I'm going to be talking in greater depth about these in just a moment, but the course content will cover things like the in-house versus the franchised operation, the F&B, by the way, stands for food and beverage job roles, so the specific roles that are required of people to come in and manage the operation. There are some key industry formula that we need to talk about, some very, very simple stuff, and in fact, to be fair, nothing absolutely too complex. You do not need to be an accountant or mathematician to understand these formula. But I'm going to be taking you through those to make sure that you have a grasp and an understanding of that. The next thing is understanding a stock result. I'm going to give you the simplistic view of why you actually need to have an external stock result to help with your controls in the business. And then obviously the understanding of those stock results once you get them. Identifying legitimate waste. Absolutely critical and a key control when talking about food and beverage. So I'll highlight some of those a little bit later. Sadly, in this day and age, we still have to be talking about identifying fraudulent and wasteful activity. The fraudulent part of things is obviously a concern for any food and beverage business. Waste can happen and does happen a lot with food, as it can with drinks side of the business. The fraudulent activity can happen anywhere across a business. The temptations are great. What I tend to try and do is to highlight where these things can happen. We can assess how the controls are happening within your business, and if there are any loopholes or any big gaps in your controls of your food and beverage business, then I can tell you how to block those, to stop those from happening. So we'll have a look at that. We'll also be talking over the 2 days about setting realistic and meaningful targets, and that's crucial and critical for your bars manager and chefs. Costing a food dish. I think the biggest surprise that ever happened for me was I was talking to so many chefs about how they controlled their food operations, and by and large they were doing a great job. Great chefs, great hands-on people. But when I actually sat them down and said, right, now look, let's make a dish of chili con carne for 20 people. Let's cost this out and try and get ourselves a margin of 65%. Show me what you do. Total silence followed, and it absolutely stunned me. And I guess, and I'm still finding it today, to be fair, really excellent chefs, great people in the kitchen. When it comes down to the admin side of things and the mathematics of obtaining a 65% margin, still totally oblivious of how to do it. So I think it's important that you guys would need to know how to cost a food dish, even if you're just going back to talk to your chefs about doing that. So we're going to look at that. We need to maximize the supplier deals. We're going to be restricted in terms of how much we can charge our clients, our members at the end of the day. So we have to start right. And the way to start right is to make absolutely sure that you've got the right supplier deals, both in the drinks side of things and on the food. And it's a constant battle, so we need to keep on top of that. So we'll talk to you more about that. I have a question. What is the lowest age at which a person can serve alcohol behind the bar when supervised? Now, if you've thought about that for a moment, you may be thinking, well, that's 18 or possibly could be 16. Bizarrely, it's actually 14 years of age. Now, if you want to know the ins and outs of that, I'll be explaining that and 19 of the key licensing law issues on the course. It's not daunting, but it's just stuff that you need to know, and certainly your bars people need to know to protect yourself, the club and its members. Marketing and merchandising your F&B offer, that you can't let happen by accident. It's got to happen by design, and I'll be taking you through the process of making sure that happens properly. And then selling skills for staff identified. We know that 91% of bar staff do not sell, they serve. Now, serving is fine, and I don't have an issue with that, but we can't miss the great opportunities that there are. Without getting pushy about it, we certainly don't want any high-powered sales techniques going on, but we do need to take any opportunities which are available to us. So in essence, and that's just a brief resume of what's happening in the course content. Now, the specific specialist skills. Now, I've actually written this as specialist skills. I think what I'd prefer to say is specialist knowledge. Do I expect you to be F&B experts at the end of this? No, I don't. It's taken me 40 years to assimilate all the information that I've got, and I'm still learning every single day. What I can say to you is this: in terms of the specialist skills, you do not need to be a chef to understand food and beverage. I burn water, so it's not an issue. I get a nosebleed in the kitchen. So don't be panicking thinking, well, I don't need to do this course because I'm not a chef, or in fact, I'm not a bar steward. That's not the case. You don't need to understand that. You need to know the processes that both of those people go through. So you need to have that as a specialist skill. In addition, you do need to be streetwise. Many chefs will say to me when I talk to them, well, of course, I don't keep a wastage record book because I don't waste anything. That's an absolute nonsense. And then I'll give them 5 instances of why they need to keep wastage record books. After that, they understand that I'm streetwise. They can't pull the wool over my eyes. I know what I'm talking about, and I certainly want to place you in the same situation so that you're streetwise too. You need a wide-ranging knowledge of the subject. Yes, you do. There are many guidelines that are given to us by Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. I shall illustrate a few of these in a little while. And you need to know what they are, so that when people are saying to you, yes, I've wasted 8% of my draft beer on pipe cleaning, and that's normal, you need to be in a position to be able to challenge that. Number 4, you need answers and solutions. Now, I guess this is the key bit really, that when your bar's manager or your chef comes to you and says, okay, well, you're in charge of food and beverage, what do I do when this happens? You need to have those solutions. On the course, we can certainly give you those solutions. Now, let's extend this just a little bit further and look at some of these specialist skills in detail. So from that whole list of things that I showed you at the start of the presentation, the 2 pages of all the different things that we're going to cover, I'm just going to focus on just a few of these things, and I'll tell you why. The in-house versus food and beverage versus the franchised. In just a moment, I'm going to explain in detail what that is. It is the most often asked question that I am challenged with by golf clubs throughout the United Kingdom to say, look, Stephen, which route should we be going down? You basically have 2 choices, which I'll explain very shortly to you. So I'm going to focus on that one certainly first of all. Secondly, I'm going to come back to these key industry formula. These are the specialist skills that you need. You've got to be able to show somebody. If a chef comes to you and says, committee have just said to me I've got to get a 70% margin on my ham, egg and chips, chili con carne, whatever else, how do I do that? Because sadly, I have to promise you that they won't, in a lot of cases, they won't know how to do that. So they're expecting this industry, key industry formula information from you. So we're certainly going to give you that. The stop results. If I were able to insist that every golf club in the United Kingdom had one control in place, it would be this control, an independent stock taker to come in and give you advice on how you are performing both behind the bars and in the kitchen. So for me, that's a specialist skill you absolutely need to have. You need to understand not just the result, but how that result was put together. And we're going to show you that on the course. Fraudulent activity versus inefficiency. Well, it goes without saying, you need to know if you have losses at the golf club, if that's been caused by fraudulent activity or simply by inefficiency. You could argue that the inefficiency factor is sort of acceptable. It can happen. People make mistakes. The fraudulent activity is an act designed to steal money or goods from you, and that's never acceptable. So we're going to talk about that. One of the training days courses I run is a day called Fiddling Facts, which is a wonderful insight. It looks at 46 different ways that fraud can happen within a food and beverage business. Looking at members of staff, looking at delivery personnel, contractors, even customers, and goes right through the whole process. We spend the whole day talking about that. We're just going to give you a brief insight into what can happen. The costing of a food dish, I think, is critical, as I mentioned before, so we're definitely going to go through a practical exercise of doing that for you. Something you can take back and talk to your chef about. And obviously controlling costs, and that comes back to wage costs, which are absolutely critical. Far too many golf clubs are spending far too much money on staffing an operation when they don't need to have people necessarily, 2 or 3 people working when one person possibly could manage it. And that certainly happens at a lot of functions when lots of hands are brought in to manage 100 people at a function, and we suddenly find we've got 10 staff waiting on tables. You don't need 10 staff. I'm going to show you how to do that properly. And then we've got marketing your offer. So these are the key areas that I'm now going to focus on in the next 10 minutes or so, just giving you more information about making absolutely sure that if you've got all 1 through to 6 correct, we're then actually marketing the offer properly. So let's just have a brief look now at some of these issues which are key to the control. In-house food and beverage versus franchised. Single biggest topic, as I've mentioned before. Most clubs will phone me up and say, Stephen, this is the situation. Our food and beverage operation isn't running profitably. We need one. We're not controlling it rather well. Should we offer it out to a franchisee? Now that's a self-employed person who can come in and run the operation themselves. Or, alternatively, they'll say to me, Stephen, our food and beverage operation is actually franchised out to somebody else. We think they're doing awfully well, and we'd like to bring it in-house and control it ourselves. We're coming to the end of our contract. Can you please come and visit with us and talk us through the options? So in-house is where it's controlled by the club. Franchised is where that whole operation, or perhaps just the catering or just the bars, is franchised out. Well, in order to be able to answer that, there are 3 key factors that we need to look at. First, in my view, is profitability. If the club is continuously losing money on the food and beverage operation, either that side of the business is going to fold due to non-profitability, or it's got to be turned around, or you might consider saying, well, do you know what, perhaps an expert, somebody who knows what they're doing, with a track record, can come in and make profit where we're not making it. So either way, we cannot take our eye off of profitability. Call it contribution if you wish to, but profitability to me is a key factor, as is this. Personnel and capability. It's interesting that when I first started looking at the in-house versus franchised operation some 12 years ago, I thought the only thing that mattered was profitability. And I quickly learned that it isn't just about profit, it's about having control. So when I'm visiting a club, I'm looking at their profitability factors, but I'm just equally as importantly, I'm looking also at their personnel. It's no good bringing it back in-house if it's been franchised out with masses of profit, if you then make a total mess of it because you don't have the personnel to control it. And those personnel must have the capability. So that's a key factor. And of course the other thing is that if you're considering going to a franchised operation, then you've got to look at the structures under which you're operating and the agreement that you're going to have with these people. And that's a key factor. I wrote to golf clubs 2 years ago now, having encountered many different types of franchise agreements, some of which were written quite literally on the back of a fag packet, and others were 10 pages long. But they were missing so many, in my view, of the key factors. So I wrote to all the golf clubs and said, why don't you send me the franchise agreement that you've got? I'll have a look at those. I'll put it all together in one franchise agreement and offer it out to the industry. And those of you that send me your franchise agreements, I will send you a free copy of the franchise agreement back. We now have, for the first time ever, an industry document some 50 pages long of a proper franchise agreement, which is available again through me, but I'm going to be talking you through that and showing you a copy of that on the course. So in-house versus franchised, a key topic on the lips of all food and beverage controllers, for people who are controlling golf clubs, being secretaries or house committees. If you're going down the franchise route, you need to have the proper document. If you're bringing it in-house, we've got to consider profitability, and we need to look at the personnel. Key topic. Okay, let's move on from there. The next thing that we're going to look at is the stock results analysis. Now, as I said to you before, for me, if I had the power to do this, I'd ensure that every golf club in the United Kingdom had to have an independent stock taker. This is somebody who you pay a fee to, and these fees range from anything from £80 to £220, depends what they have to do for you. But independent anyway, that they'll come in, they will give you advice, they will produce a result every month, and that's critical. When you're first setting up, certainly taking a food and beverage operation in-house and controlling it yourself, you need to know that you're doing the right things. These people, these independent stock takers, will come and advise you on what's going well and what's not going well, but you need to have that information every month, certainly for the first 12 months. They will give you a detailed analysis. Part of their brief is that at the end of the result that they have produced for you, they will sit down with you face-to-face for an hour, 2 hours, as long as it takes, and they'll tell you, look, this part of the control is absolutely brilliant. Keep doing that. However, we've got some loopholes here, some things not quite right there, things you need to pay attention to. So they'll send you this detailed analysis. Your job will be to look at that detailed analysis and understand what it actually means. And from that, you can put together an action plan. And what I say to my clients is, your stock taker comes in, produces the results, they explain it to you on the day, they send you the detailed result, emailed over to you within 48 hours. You need to analyse that information and say, look, actually our target for, as an instance, for the bars was 63% before any members discount. We're actually only getting 58% before any discount, which is knocking the whole of our target setting. It's skittling it completely, so we just need to get to grips better with that. So bars manager, this is what I want you to do. Go back and look at your pricing. Go back and look at your offers that you're getting from your suppliers. So there's an action plan for you. And report back to me within 7 days. So an action plan must come out of those stock.
Perhaps the most important part of the stock result process is to actually understand the figures that are put in front of you. And what your stock taker will do is to sit down with you and discuss some of the following items that are going to come on the screen. Now, those of you listening to this may or may not be familiar with the terms of gross profit and gross margins. And if I just simplify this, people get this confused thinking it's the same thing. The way to remember it for me, the way I always remember it, is that gross profit is pounds and gross margins ain't money. They're percentages. So I'm going to tell you the difference between gross profits, which is how much money you're going to make on every sale, and gross margins. And why are gross margins important, the percentages? Simply because they provide us with industry norms. You can make comparisons against other golf clubs, the margins they're making on their food and beverage, against your own. And there are industry standard margins as well. So I'll be revealing those to you as we go along. The next thing is day stock versus dead money. Essentially what we're saying here is the stock taker will measure how many days stock you have of each item and make a comparison against that, against the money that's being held, which we call dead money. Anything that's left in stock, unsold, is essentially dead money. So we need to keep that day stock very tight, keep it very low, because obviously we don't want to be overstocked, because if things get overstocked, they can go beyond their sell-by dates, and we lose all the profit on those things. So I'll be giving you some guidance on day stock versus dead money. Now the sales mix is important simply because we need to know why certain products, which may be our most profitable products, are rising in sale or are falling, and we need to take appropriate action. So I'll be showing you about the sales mix when we look at a stock result on the day of the course. Surplus versus deficit. This is the figure that's going to appear at the bottom of the stock result, and it's going to show us a surplus, which is more money than we expected, which sounds a little odd, against the deficit, which is less money than we expected. Now, no stock result in history since the dawn of time has ever come up with no surplus and no deficit. It simply won't happen. It's not possible. But we expect that those surplus or deficits to be within certain frameworks. And if they're too high, then that needs to be investigated. If they're too low, that needs to be investigated. I will illustrate that again on the course, giving you some specific examples. The last thing that we're going to look at on this particular section is the yield. Now to me, I have to say of all the figures that we're actually going to look at on the stock result, the yield is perhaps the most important. And this is a measure of how successful you have been at taking product, selling that product without losing it. And that loss, you may recall, may have occurred due to inefficiency or, heaven forbid, theft. It can happen. So we shall look at that yield figure. And again, we have an industry law, which is set for the food and beverage industry. So we'll be looking at that too. Now, just touching upon the fraudulent activity, well, if I just show you some of these things here. Counting. Now, often in the past, I've been paid literally to sit in bars, in pubs, in hotels, in golf clubs, and where there is a suspicion, and that's all we should say at this moment in time, of fraudulent activity occurring, I've been asked to sit and watch what the staff do. And one of the things they do is actually count. They will underring a till, and instead of taking the money out of the till, they'll leave it in the till for the duration of their working period. But what they do is they need to keep a count of how many fiddles, how many pounds they've stolen over the last 3, 4 or 5 hours. And I've seen staff counting, and I'll illustrate this on the course, with coins, straws, bottles, changing drawers, cocktail sticks, and even polo mints. And if that sounds utterly bizarre, I will illustrate that beautifully for you on the course. Obviously, stealing stock is own consumption. Lots of staff will simply think it's okay to have a half a Coke or lemonade because it's only worth 5p and doesn't matter. It does matter. That's theft. So I'll be showing you ways of making sure that stock cannot be stolen. Manipulating the result. Very clever people, if they know the requirements of the golf club in terms of we accept to have a stock loss of say 3%, they'll actually manipulate the result to give you a stock loss of 3% and keep the difference. Now, with our stock taking results, we can make sure that cannot happen. More details of that on the course. Keeping the freebies. The good news is, in food and beverage, very often you will find that your suppliers will send you 11 gallons of beer, a case of whiskey or some wine or some food. Freebies. We have to make absolutely sure that those freebies come to the club and not to anybody who's signing for them. And again, there's a system and a method of making sure that that does happen. Own bottlers is a particularly nasty affair. This is a deliberate intention to deceive here. That staff will bring in their own bottles of scotch, say, as an example, no sale per till 28 times for each measure, and then simply keep the money. We need to identify those, and we can identify those because of what happens on a stock result. It will show up that we're overstocked on whiskey when we're actually making sales with the till, and therefore our assumption may be that people are bringing their own bottles in. We then need to prove it, but that's not too difficult to do. Okay, so moving away from the fraudulent activity, let's look at inefficient activity. This is the other side of the coin. Everybody has to record every single item of waste. And on the course, I'm going to present you with a waste sheet which will precisely record every item of waste behind a bar and in a kitchen. And that must be kept up to date and given to the stock taker. No recording of giveaways. If we have any giveaways, for instance, if the house committee come in or the club secretary comes in and says, well, I'll have a coffee please, or give me a pint of bitter, that has to be written down. So every single time that a giveaway occurs must be written in that wasted record book and signed for. Bad seller practices. Bad seller practices which will lead to inefficiency is that we don't clean the pipes. Pipes should be cleaned, in most cases, every 7 days. That may be extended to 10 days, possibly. But essentially what must not happen is that you leave the cellar practices to go unattended for 2 weeks. The pipes simply yeast up, and what happens at the serving end is that the beer then fob, and all you end up doing is throwing lots of beer away from trays under the dispense points. We throw that fobbed beer down the sink. So good cellar practices are actually key to defeating inefficiency. Poor stock rotation. We use a phrase, and you may well use this in your own world of selling in the shop, which is FIFO, which is first in and first out. We must make absolutely sure that we keep on top of good stock rotation, critical to the process. Bad portion control. This essentially relates to kitchen practices. Very often what can happen is that we try and control the portions put onto a plate by the size of the plate, by scoops and by ladle sizes, so that we know we're putting 4 or 6 ounces of chips onto a plate, or peas, whatever may happen. But over-enthusiastic staff, and let's simply give them the benefit of the doubt, may sometimes give 2 portions of peas or chips to people they like and friends. Bad practice, but it does happen. So we have to keep hold of that portion control. Now, having gotten all of those things right, we're coming through to the final home straight, where we're talking about marketing your offer. And basically, back to basics. Question everything. The who, what, where, how, when, why scenario of why are we doing the things that we're doing? Why do some lines sell better than others? How are we communicating with our customers? We've got to make absolutely sure that there is no excuse that we miss an opportunity for a sale. So I'm going to take you through those basics. There's some simple principles to follow, which you can apply to any form of sales activity. Don't be the best kept secret in town. If you have a fabulous food and beverage offer, then make sure you shout it from the rooftops. Everybody needs to know about this. You will know we have a lot of car park golfers, those that actually park in the car park, take the clubs out of the boot, put the shoes on in the car park, go onto the course and play for 4 hours and never even come in the clubhouse. It is even suggested that some 80% of all members of golf clubs very rarely use the food and beverage outlet. We need to make absolutely sure that we don't miss an opportunity to communicate with them either in the car park or out on the golf course by perhaps offering a facility to phone in orders, so that I'll be in 2 hours, please reserve me a table, and this is what I want, because there's a menu at the 9th hole. We'll discuss all those things in great detail and talk about some of your great ideas too for defeating that. Customer communication is the key. I think what we need to do here is to make clear what our offer is. If you have a look at your own websites and find out on your website, what does it say about your food and beverage offer? Does it just say, oh, by the way, we have a bar and we've got a restaurant? Because if it says that, it's a nice start, but it's got to be sexier than that. You've got to have a powerful image that says when you finish playing golf here, you do need to come and join us for this treat that you're going to have. And even if you're not playing golf, well, then we're doing various other promotions and events throughout the year. We've got lots of activities, quizzes and race nights, different things going on. So we've got to get a hold of these people, communicate with them and say, look, this is why you need to come to us. This is why you're going to pass, here we are, why you would pass 10 other outlets to get to us. And if you really can't think of why they wouldn't do that, passing 10 other pubs, clubs, restaurants, golf courses even, to get back to you, well, then we have a bit of a problem. We need to look at your image. We need to say what your communication is actually saying about you. Now, don't laugh, but here are 3 different marketing tools that we use. SWOT analysis you may well have heard of, that looks at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats of an outlet. And it's an exercise which we do with your golf club when you attend the course. The GROAP simply looks at growth within your food and beverage market, and it looks at the ROP is whether that growth is going to come from regular people, occasional people, or potential customers. Not forgetting also that we have exits. But again, we'll do an illustration of that on the course. And perfect. Perfect is that we're taking a view of how good the staff service is. And there's a little exercise we can do called Entitled Perfect, which will let us identify what makes the perfect customer carer. So there's a little insight into some marketing tools within the course. Now that's an awful lot that we talked about today. It's just an overview because, as you may recall, this is a 2-day course, so you may be saying, well, where do I go from here? Well, it's 2 days for a solid ground is what I'm going to say to you. I've been dealing with this for 40 years. When you meet me, you'll obviously realise I don't look that old, but 40 years I've been doing this. But I love this subject with a passion. 2 days of solid grounding. I just like you to come along with an open mind, and obviously it's going to be new to you because you're golfing professionals and just coming up through the ranks. but this is an opportunity for you to expand your knowledge, and after 2 days I'll make this promise to you. You will leave wiser about the subject, certainly more capable than perhaps you were, and let me tell you, well ahead of the game of people that do not attend this course, so that you are better prepared for your next move. So that when you're going to look for a position, perhaps, well, anywhere in the United Kingdom, you'll be able to say to them, not only do I have these skills that I'm a professional golfer, but I can also manage and control a food and beverage outlet. Now that's a proud boast. It's a big boast, but we're here for you, not just for the 2 days, but I will make myself available to you. You'll have contact with me through emails, through the telephones, to just simply, when you get into your new outlets, is to pick up the phone and say, Stephen, look, I've got this as a situation, just run this past me. So we're not going to leave you exposed, we are going to be there to support you. So may I thank you for listening to me, Supreme Commander Stephen Brown of Information. And details of where you can contact me in my training service are shown below. But obviously, initially, you're going to be speaking hopefully to Michael Abbott and his colleagues at headquarters, and they'll tell you more and more all the details that you need to know about the course and answer any questions. And I think at this stage, if Michael, if you're about, perhaps we can have a chat.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I've got a few questions for you, Stephen, if that's okay.
Fire away.
Kind of watching the webinar then, I mean, it's quite obvious what the content of the days are and how that'll be, you know, very useful for PGA professionals out in the industry. And I think one thing that we both agree on is that a lot more PGA pros are being asked to move into managerial positions. As you know, it can be hard times for some golf clubs at the moment, and you know, pros are being asked to put on a number of different hats.
Absolutely, totally. Yes, more and more, as you rightly say.
And kind of watching this then, the content's quite clear, but what exactly is this going to allow PGA professionals to go back to their facilities and do?
Okay. If I try and sum that up, it's going to be that extra and additional resource when they start their careers, so that they're not just, and I don't mean this to be condescending in any way, they're not a one-trick pony. They have more cards up their sleeve than I just play golf. Yeah, you play golf and you do that to a great standard. But what you can also now do is be an additional resource for the club, that in these difficult times, that if they need somebody who is more experienced in food and beverage, they can certainly turn to these people to say, right, okay, well, you've had some experience in this, you've attended a course, you have a lot of information, now let's take that information and apply it. So I guess these people are going to be much more rounded in their approach to supporting their golf club.
Okay, so well, with that in mind then, the other thing that I was kind of wanting to know was, do you think this would be relevant to, what PGA professional do you think this is kind of relevant to? Do you think it's for those already in managerial positions, or do you think actually, you know, someone who's coming, who maybe has just finished their training and wants to really move into the management side of things, this will be just as useful for them as well?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't exclude anybody from this. I don't know too many PGA professionals currently, even that are in management positions, that have this sort of level of knowledge specifically about food and beverage. And even though we're setting this at a fairly basic level, I still believe that everybody, I don't care who comes on this course, we can teach them something about food and beverage in general, and food and beverage as it applies to their particular club. Because what I'm going to be able to do for them, and I'm going to be spending a lot of time with them, is that if prior to the course they speak to their food and beverage people, and they have any issues, they can bring those issues to me at the course, and we will give them some solutions, some resolutions, that they can therefore take back to the club and put back in place. So we welcome everybody in this course at whatever level. That's
brilliant. Okay, well, Stephen, I think we've kind of finished the webinar now. We kind of round it off on a positive note. So, you know, thank you very much for taking the time out to come and speak with us today. On behalf of all the PGA members who are going to view this webinar, you know, it really is appreciated. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you here at the PGA for a seminar soon.
That sounds absolutely great. Thanks for the invitation.
Excellent. Well, for the PGA members that are watching this recorded webinar, if you do want to see Stephen in action, don't forget to go onto the Member Education homepage and register your interest for this seminar. If you're watching this on YouTube, there is a link in the About section below, so just click on that and you'll be redirected through to our website where you can learn more about the course and book on for the course. So, Stephen, before we end, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's absolutely fine for now. Apart from the fact, if anybody wants to speak to me directly, if they have any queries, you have the details now on this